have the privilege of introducing Jason. I think you guys all have his background. Dudley Slater and Jason worked together at a company called Integra. That company was formed in 1994. It was sold in 2011 by Dudley Slater. It was called Integra, still was after that, called Integra. Integra laid fiber throughout the 11 western states, and they lit it up. So it was a very big fiber optics company and very successful. And Jason's was involved in that entire process. And as Jason said, the fiber, and Lisa said, the fiber optics is essential for the future of Clark County. If we're going to attract high-tech businesses here, if we're going to attract the kinds of things that we want to do at Clark over time, we're going to need dark fiber and then light it up. So, Jason, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let me start out first by saying it certainly is a pleasure to be here. I've been in this business now for 25 years plus. I have a passion for building networks, and it's exciting to see others who have a passion. And the vision that's displayed from Brad, from Lisa, from Bob, from Kevin, having the foresight working with Brent from the Port of Ridgefield in, what can we do? We see that there's a need. What are some options out there? And it's certainly a pleasure to be a part of that vision and to bring some value to the community. I've been in Vancouver now for 8 years, so a part of Clark County. I look forward to contributing on this project and hopefully going forward. So actually, let's see. So we're going to talk about a few things today. I'm going to share with you what we're finding from a state of connectivity. I'm going to start out from more of a global U.S. perspective. We're going to drill down and into Washington, into Clark County, what we're finding. I'm going to cover the impact of those new technologies that you're seeing. Siemens talked about a few of them, but I think there's some more that we should talk about, because this isn't just about the future of manufacturing, it's what we're seeing today with local businesses. I'll then talk about some of the design principles. I was the Chief Technology Officer for Integra Electric Lightwave, so built these networks, and we won't go into the nuts and bolts because I understand kind of where we are from a baseline today, but we'll talk about what we're thinking about when looking at building a network such as this. Hopefully that'll be a good education, and certainly willing to take questions. The benefits to the foundation for this type of network, the benefits to the local businesses, to jobs, to continuing to carry this forward. Listen, being here 8 years, Vancouver and Clark County is a special place, right? It's a special place to me and my family, and being a part of, moving this forward and the benefits that it's going to bring, making sure my 16-year-old son has a job in the future, right? That's all important. And then we'll talk about a few of the success stories. Obviously, you're going to see Integra in here, one of the success stories, and proof cases. So, looking at where we are, where the United States is from a fiber adoption standpoint, this is both business and residential services that we're talking about. We have a penetration rate in the United States of about 11%. You can see where that puts us on a worldwide scale. Looking at some of those other countries that are looking to be technological leaders, the United States certainly has focused on long-haul routes connecting cities to cities. New York to Los Angeles, Seattle to Portland. That was some of the first fiber that was put in the ground, and then from there it's gone to NFL cities, right? Seattle and others. And you start looking at where does Vancouver, where does Ridgefield, where does Clark County lie in that grand scheme of things, and that, starts getting pretty low. But we have some ways to catch up in the United States. And I think of this as infrastructure, right? Brad brought it up in his presentation, right? What the government, had to take over electricity to bring it to people, right? They're not, they've offered some money, they've done some of that. broadband infrastructure will be a key going forward, and we need to catch up as a country. So we take a look at Washington, and in Washington, we're in a bit better spot than the United States, right at 31% fiber adoption. Certainly Washington is on the forefront of technology. We have the Amazons, the Microsoft, the Googles, so, we see a bit better, but, still not having fiber connectivity, having broadband services, which, broadband services, really a gigabit is required for most businesses today. Only 11.9% of Washingtonians have access to a gigabit service or better. And you think about that, you think about, from a home perspective, maybe a gig isn't required yet. Although anybody with a teenager and seeing how much they're playing video games and downloading videos, there certainly is that requirement. So understanding again where we're at from kind of a baseline in the room, I figured it'd be beneficial, and hopefully everybody can see this all right, on how long it actually takes based on the bandwidth you have. A 2-hour HD movie, right, with typical home connection of 10 meg, that's 60 minutes that you're waiting to download that movie, right? And that's residential-based services. We're not talking about business-grade services where you want your employees to be more productive. You're spending good money on your employees, and you want them to, for that 10 gig file that's going to take all day with a 20 meg connection, is going to take 1 minute and 20 seconds with your gigabit connection, right? That 40 zettabyte file that Hunter was talking about, right? Even that gig connection isn't fast enough. So you want to make sure that the network has the scalability and the bandwidth required to meet those needs of today and in the future. So drilling down into Clark County, it's a bit harder to get some statistics, so I wanted to share some real-world experiences that Dudley and myself were out there talking to some of these institutions, higher ed institutions, K through 12, large employers, and really finding out what the need is. And they're sharing a couple of things with us, right? The impact of the consolidation of service providers. If you think about it, 5 to 10 years ago, how many service providers we had? We had TW Telecom, you had Level 3, you had CenturyLink, you had Comcast, you had Integra, you had Electric Lightwave as a separate entity, you had XO, you had, probably a couple of handfuls, and as you've seen over time, TW Telecom got purchased by Level 3. Level 3 got purchased by CenturyLink. Integra purchased Electric Lightwave. Electric Lightwave was purchased by, and Integra was purchased by Zayo. So you're down to really, for a lot of these businesses that we've talked to, 2 real choices in service providers that they have. In some areas, they might have 3, potentially 4, but that's really limited choice when you're talking about it. You're going back to the days of when this was a monopoly. Right, so not having that choice, not having those options, right, drives cost decisions, drives, limited bandwidth, limited investment in the area. So the key issues were service provider choice. Route diversity was another one that we heard about, right? If those service providers aren't making that investment into our communities, right, they're not investing in alternate routes for those businesses, making sure that their business is not going to go down because of the lack of communication infrastructure and when it goes down. And the third one was capacity and bandwidth, right? We don't have enough, bandwidth to do business, right? In some cases, right, they were mailing hard disks from one location to another. In the day and age that we're in, they were mailing hard drives from one location to another location so they could send that data back and forth, right? They couldn't get enough bandwidth to connect that. That's right here locally today, not the future. I know we're talking about the future, but that's today in our community. So let's talk about some of those technologies that are impacting. This will not be that overwhelming, I promise you. But I wanted to share, what I'm seeing out there today that, technology is having an impact. Certainly medical imaging, the bottom right-hand corner, the PACS images, the X-rays being sent back and forth between hospitals and clinics so your doctor can look at the results. Cloud computing, right? Everybody's going to the cloud, whether it's you personally, whether it's your business. Everything is migrating to the cloud, so that requires high-speed bandwidth connections. And then big data analytics, right? It's taking all of this information from all of this, technology, the Internet of Things, all of the reports that you're looking at from a business, analyzing it, and solving problems that we didn't know that we had, right? Or in some cases, maybe we do know that we have the problems and we can admit it and we can lay on that couch and be okay with it. But it's, analyzing the data and getting to an outcome. Internet of Things, and then 5G, right? 5G is also a technology that's, going to cause bandwidth constraints. It's going to fix some things, and so we'll dig a bit more into that as well, right? All of this is driving the need for more bandwidth, right? And this is not stopping. This is hockey stick type growth from a service provider's perspective, right? We were growing month over month, day over day. Existing customers were, demanding more bandwidth from us. So we're going to talk through a few of the sectors. The first one, since obviously the foundation, first approached us, it'd be beneficial to talk about the education industry, what we're seeing in, not only higher ed, but also K through 12. You have distance learning, everything from, your elementary student, right, who's now taking classes at home, can take classes online, needs to connect back to teachers, professors in the case of higher ed, right? It's going, a mix of campus environment and also distance learning to educate our future workforce. You need broadband for that. Online curriculum, right? Making sure that the teachers are communicating with the parents, that the syllabuses are online. You know where you're going, what you need to study. You know what grades your student is getting real time as it's happening. Making sure that's communicated. Bring your own device, right? I have a 16-year-old son. At 8 or 9, he had a cell phone. He was taking that to school. He's in high school now. It's a requirement to have computers, right? They got to take their laptop to school, so bring your own device is now in the schools. I don't think there's a requirement to bring your own bandwidth, right? They need that bandwidth to provide to those students. So machine learning, automation, I think Siemens did a great job and Brad did a great job of talking to those requirements, where they're at today, right? Certainly requirements with your Boeings, with your In-Situs, and where it's going in the future, what those future requirements will be. Retail. Retail's also evolving, right? Even though Amazon's out there and you're getting lots of things delivered to your house, right? The retail experience is changing. They're focused on the customer experience. They're focused on making sure that those millennials, when they come into those stores, right, are out there, taking pictures and tweeting out, the experience that they're having in the retail environment. If they're not, that retail environment will then fade away, in my perspective. I was telling Keith, I think it was, I was driving back from Seattle the other day, and I looked at Cabela's, and my wife was with me, and I said, do you know why Cabela's has been so successful? Why, it's a sporting goods store. They sell guns and fishing poles. Why they've been so successful, and that's because the user experience they've created, right? They have the aquarium, the fish tanks in there, right? That gets people taking pictures, and they have the stuffed animals that died of old age, right? That in there as well, but it's about the overall experience, and that's where retail is going. But that requires media centers, that requires broadband in those retail environments, right? So none of this is changing. Digital advertising, right? You don't want to go in there and talk to a clerk about, what all the bells and whistles are, because they don't know. They're 16 and they should be in school right now. But it's the videos that are around you, right? That's going to be the future of our retail experience if those places want to continue to be sustainable. Certainly surveillance and point of sale machines, right? That's all going to be standard as well. Medical imaging, we talked a bit about this, but I think it's, it's important to realize, right? Telemedicine, virtual medicine, talking to your doctor remotely, right? Talking to your doctor remotely and getting a remote cure. Well, the last time I checked, there's a value to live on this side of the river, and that's like 9%. So if we don't have broadband access over here, but they do in Portland, where's that doctor who's going to help those patients actually live, right? I got to have broadband in order to help those patients. So if we do nothing, right, and we rely on others to do something where they're going to make investment in their community, the larger communities where all the dollars are, then we're going to miss out on this whole opportunity of having, a specialty in our community. Electronic medical records, right? Everything's electronic these days. They need access in the hospitals, in the clinics, the doctors, the picture archiving communication systems, right? That's your MRIs, that's your CT scans. They take, multiple gigabytes of data, terabytes of data, and they have to transfer those between the clinics. Wearable devices, Hunter touched a bit on this, right? That's, monitoring your blood, monitoring your movement, communicating back with your doctor. All of these are bandwidth drivers that are driving this demand to continue to increase. Everything moving to the cloud, well, it lives somewhere. It lives in these data centers. As the adoption rate continues to grow, right? Not everybody's in the cloud yet. Certainly there's a push. I believe that the number of businesses, percentages of businesses that are in the cloud is somewhere around 30%. So that's still a lot of businesses that need to migrate to the cloud. The demand for data centers is going to continue to grow and expand, right? Which means data center interconnect, that east-west connectivity. Then there's the north-south connectivity, how you communicate, the business, the resident communicates to the data center. We certainly have data centers, throughout Clark County. You'll continue to see that expand. You'll continue to see it expand throughout the Oregon and Washington as well. And then the growth of the Internet of Things, like we talked about, everything's connected these days. Your tennis shoes, your watch, your phone. But it's not just that, right? It's your stove, it's your microwave, it's your refrigerator. When the refrigerator at the Koenders household, it has the water filter is old, right? It phones back and says, okay, send a new one, and we receive a new one in the mail, replace it. So everything is being connected in the household. Your thermostat, so you'll continue to see that grow. That requires bandwidth. That is, it's no longer enough to have a 20 meg connection at the house. But wait, isn't 5G going to solve all this for us, right? Isn't 5G going to supply the unlimited bandwidth that we need? Well, certainly, 5G solves some issues for us. 5G solves, getting from your mobile device and, other devices will certainly be connected via the 5G infrastructure back to a cell tower. But from that cell tower, that requires a fiber connection, right? That requires fiber to get back to, where your traffic is going, where your data is going. And 5G is, still being standardized. Also, the footprint, if you think of 4G LTE, that footprint of those macro cells covers an awfully good radius. Well, with 5G, that is condensed significantly. So the rollout of a 5G network is going to be slower, and it's going to require densification of our fiber infrastructure, right? So that's an additional opportunity. Those cell providers are going to be looking for fiber to connect those cell towers to that will likely be on every light post going down a street, right? Because that's about the distance, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 feet. is going to be the distance for those 5G small cells. So on my next section here, I have a couple blueprints that we'll talk through when we're actually building that fiber network. I'm just kidding. It was pretty interesting, though. So when we go through, I just wanted to cover some proof points that we're thinking about. We're about with the engagement with the foundation, looking at is a fiber network feasible within Clark County. We're about halfway through that, so there's still a lot of questions that we're working on answering. I don't have all the answers right now, but those will come shortly. But I want to let you know, here's some of the things that we're seeing and some of the things that we're thinking about. Certainly the network assets in Clark County are limited. There is fiber infrastructure, we see that, right? It's primarily through major corridors, major thoroughways where it's going to cover, some of the businesses that you're looking at, but depending on where your business is, it's hit or miss on whether, that requires some builds to get to. And every one of those organizations are looking for additional fiber services, right? I think we've talked to now probably 15 or 16 businesses, institutions, and they're all, it's a common theme that they are looking for additional bandwidth, additional connectivity, and options. So throughout my career, right, I've developed some key tenets, some key principles in building fiber network. Certainly the first one is network reliability. Businesses, educational institutions, they want to make sure that their connections are reliable. If they have fiber services, if they're lucky enough to have fiber services, diversity is a key in making sure that's designed in a ring type environment. So if that backhoe or that person digging or that truck that takes down the pole line, right? If that fails, it routes over to a different route. If they don't have fiber services, right? If they're still on copper services, well, chances are they're out of luck unless they happen to have an additional provider in the facility. Also, we take a look at network automation in our industry. Automation doesn't solve everything, but it certainly takes away the human element when you're provisioning this, and it standardizes the service. It enables you to make sure that the service is provisioned the same and provisioned reliably and in an effective manner all the time. So the benefits of building a Greenfield network, starting from the ground up and building a network is you can automate, right? The technology of these next generation networks allows you to automate more and more efficiently than you could in the past. Service velocity, I'm sure that all of you have had pains with your utility or your service provider, and from a business perspective, is it going to take a month? Is it going to take 2 months? Is it going to take 6 months to get my service delivered to me? Service velocity is certainly a key tenet that we look at, turning that delivery time frame, and when you're building a fiber network, that does take time. There's permitting in those pieces, but once that building is connected, making sure that you can turn up services within hours rather than days or months is certainly important. And then cost of delivery, making sure that